My CEO's psycho childhood friend tried to destroy my life because he loves me. Now she's paralyzed from her own murder attempt. I'm Serena, and I need you to understand something right now. I'm not some gold digger who went after a rich man. I spent 2 months actively hating my boss, and another month trying to quit before he convinced me to stay. The woman who tried to destroy my life wasn't just some jealous ex either. She was someone who'd been circling him since they were 7 years old, and thought 20 years of proximity meant she owned him. But let me start with the day I met my boss because that disaster pretty much set the tone for everything that came after. I was already running 20 minutes late for my first day when I slammed into the back of a black Mercedes at the red light. The car shook and my coffee exploded everywhere, turning my only clean blazer into a brown disaster. The man stepped out of the car and everything about him screamed money, from his perfect hair that somehow didn't move in the wind, to his suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. He walked around his car taking photos with his phone while I stood there frantically apologizing. He never said a word, just kept photographing every angle. Look, I know this is my fault, but could you please just let me give you my information so I can get to work? I finally snapped. Some of us actually need our jobs to survive. The police will be here in 12 minutes, he said in this flat voice. The words came out of me like vomit. Are you kidding me right now? I said I'm sorry like 50 times and I have insurance, so what's your problem? He looked at me then with these dark eyes that had zero emotion in them and said, the damage exceeds $4,000, which requires legal documentation. I just rolled my eyes at the stubbornness. By the time the police finished, I was 45 minutes late. I ran through the lobby and threw myself into the elevator, praying Janet from HR would understand. But the receptionist told me, Mr. Warner will see you now, which made no sense. She led me up to the top floor where the CEO worked. And there behind the desk sat the man from the Mercedes. My brain just stopped working for a second because what were the chances that the random rich asshole I'd crashed into was actually the CEO of this company? He didn't even look up from his computer when he said, "You're 45 minutes late. That's unacceptable. Because you insisted on waiting for the police." The words flew out before I could stop them, and I immediately wanted to die because I just yelled at him twice in one morning, and you just yelled at your potential employer. Again. Now he looked at me with those same dark, emotionless eyes from earlier. Most people grovel. Why aren't you groveling? Because I'm already having the worst day possible and I need this job too much to pretend I'm not pissed. At this point, I figured I was already screwed, so why fake it? Good. I need an assistant with a spine. The last 3 cried. You start now. I stood there trying to process what just happened. I'm sorry, what? You're hiring me? After I crashed into your car and yelled at you? Did I stutter? He went back to his computer like the conversation was over. Don't you want to see my resume or ask about my experience or literally anything normal bosses do? He looked at me again, and I swear there was something almost amused in his expression. You were 10 minutes early before the accident. You didn't make excuses. You told me exactly what you thought of me without flinching. That's more useful than whatever's on your resume. This is insane. Your desk is outside. My calendar needs reorganizing and I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Figure it out. I turned to leave, then stopped. What's your name? Since apparently you're my boss now. Nathan Warner. And Serena? Don't hit any more cars on company time. The first day working for Nathan was a nightmare. I sat at my desk trying to figure out his calendar system, which looked like someone had thrown appointments at a wall to see what stuck. 3 meetings were scheduled for the same time slot, and one just said Suarez, usual place, with no other information. I knocked on his door and he didn't even look up. What? You have 3 meetings at 2 o'clock. Cancel 2 of them. Which 2? The unimportant ones. I don't know which ones are unimportant because I don't know what any of them are about. Then figure it out. That's your job. The anger hit me so fast I couldn't stop it. My job is to assist you, not read your mind. Unless that was in the job description I missed? He finally looked up and his expression was completely blank, like he was staring at a wall instead of a person. Suarez is priority. Cancel the others. And where's the usual place? If you can't handle basic tasks, maybe this position isn't right for you. I walked straight up to his desk because I was done with this already. If you can't give basic information, maybe having an assistant isn't right for you. We stared at each other for what felt like forever, and I thought for sure I was about to get fired on my first day. He told me the place in seconds. See how easy that was? I turned to leave and heard him mutter, "Unbelievable." But when I looked back, he was already typing again. 3 days later, I watched him destroy someone in a meeting and I couldn't stay quiet. His CFO had presented quarterly projections, and Nathan listened with that dead expression he always wore, then said, "This is what happens when mediocrity thinks it's excellence. Did you actually analyze these numbers, or just hope I wouldn't notice they're wrong?" The room went completely silent, and the CFO's face turned red. "I ran them 3 times, sir." "Then you failed 3 times. The man gathered his papers with shaking hands, and Nathan just watched like he was observing an ant. After everyone fled, I stayed behind. "What is wrong with you?" He looked up from his laptop. His calculations were off by $2 million. So tell him to fix it. Don't destroy his entire career in one sentence. Nathan tilted his head slightly. He should be grateful I'm only questioning his competence and not his integrity. You think that's better? You basically called him stupid and worthless. I called his work inadequate because it was. You're unbelievable. Do you actually not understand how cruel that was? Or do you just enjoy watching people feel small? He stood up and walked around his desk, stopping way too close to me. I don't pay people to have feelings. I pay them to be competent. You pay them to be human beings doing a job, not machines programmed for perfection. If they want comfort, they can work somewhere else. If you want robots, you should buy a factory. We were practically nose to nose now, and I could see something flash in his eyes that might have been anger or might have been something else entirely. You've been here 3 days and you think you can tell me how to run my company? I've been here 3 days and I've watched 3 people leave your office in tears. That's not leadership, it's just bullying with a fancy title. Then quit. The words hung between us, and I realized he was testing me, waiting to see if I'd back down like everyone else. No. Someone needs to tell you when you're being a monster. Apparently that's part of my job now, too. He stepped back and returned to his desk. The CFO's reports are due by 5. Make sure he knows that. A month into working for Nathan, and I'd figured out how to survive him. He'd walk past my desk at exactly 7 o'clock every morning, and I'd already have his schedule printed because he refused to look at screens before his first meeting. He'd make that little huffing sound when someone was wasting his time, and I'd interrupt with a fake emergency call. I'd learned that when he got too quiet during meetings, it meant he was about to destroy someone, so I'd jump in with questions to redirect his attention. The weird thing was, he'd started to actually listen when I told him he was being horrible. Not always, but enough that 2 out of 3 people had stopped crying in his office every day. That Wednesday, I was forwarding contracts when Nathan came out of his office and stood behind my desk reading over my shoulder. He did this sometimes, like personal space wasn't a thing that existed. You changed the meeting order, he said, looking at tomorrow's schedule. Because you always get irritated after talking to Bowman and then you take it out on whoever's next. So I put the intern presentations after lunch instead. He stayed quiet for so long I thought he was mad. But then he said, "That's actually intelligent." Coming from Nathan, that was basically a declaration of love. Did you just compliment me? Should I call a doctor? I spun my chair to face him, and he was standing close enough that I had to look up. Don't get used to it, he said. But his mouth did that thing where it almost turned into a smile. The Jenkins contract needs to be filed before noon. Already done. Also responded to the 14 emails you've been ignoring from marketing and told them you'll review their proposal when they submit something that doesn't look like a 3rd grader made it. I didn't tell you to say that. No, but that's what you were thinking, and they need to know their work isn't good enough without you making someone cry about it. He leaned against my desk, which was the most relaxed I'd ever seen him at work. You're rewriting my emails now? I'm translating them from robot to human. You should pay me extra for that. You want a raise for doing your job? I want a raise for teaching you how to act like a person. That's way harder than managing your calendar. He actually almost laughed, but the elevator dinged at that exact time. A blonde woman stepped out looking like she'd been dipped in money. She was dressed in designer clothes from head to toe, and walked like everyone was beneath her. She walked straight past me like I was furniture, and Nathan's whole body went rigid. "Victoria," he said, and his voice went back to that flat tone I hadn't heard in weeks. "Nathan, darling, you've been ignoring my calls," she said, running her hand down his chest. He stepped back, but she followed, maintaining contact. "I've been busy," he said, removing her hand, but she just laughed and moved closer. "Too busy for me? We both know that's not true. Daddy wants you at the house for dinner this weekend. He has a proposal he wants to discuss, and I have a new dress I want you to see me in." She pressed against him, and I felt something twist in my stomach that definitely wasn't jealousy, because that would be insane. Nathan looked uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen before, like he didn't know how to handle her. "I'll check my schedule," he said, trying to put space between them, but his desk was behind him. "Don't be silly. You never miss our family dinners. We've been doing them for 20 years. That's when she finally noticed me sitting at my desk and her eyes went cold. "Is this your new secretary?" She said secretary like it was a synonym for trash executive assistant, Nathan corrected, and I was shocked he bothered. "How quaint. I heard you hired the girl who crashed into your car." Daddy couldn't believe it when I told him. "We had a good laugh about your charity case." She looked at me with this smirk that made me want to throw something at her perfect face. Though I suppose someone from her background would do anything to keep a job like this. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up because I was done being looked at like I was nothing. Victoria laughed, and it sounded like nails on glass. "Oh, she speaks. Nathan, you really should train your staff better. It's inappropriate for the help to insert themselves into private conversations." The word help hit exactly how she wanted it to. "I'm not the help. I'm his assistant. And you don't have an appointment, so technically you're the one being inappropriate." She turned to Nathan with this pouty expression that probably worked on every other man in existence. "Are you going to let her talk to me like that? You know how sensitive I am." Nathan moved away from his desk and stood between us, which shocked me. "Serena's right. You don't have an appointment. And she's not a charity case. She's the most competent assistant I've had." Victoria's face went red. "You're defending her? Over me? She's my employee and you're being disrespectful in my office. I think you should leave." Nathan's voice was colder than I'd ever heard it, and Victoria looked like he'd slapped her. This is because of her, isn't it? She's turned you against me. I don't know what she's doing for you, but I could do it better. The implication in her voice made me want to gag. Nathan walked to his door and held it open. Victoria, leave, now. After Victoria left, Nathan stood there for a moment, still holding his office door open, like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. I went back to my computer, trying to process the fact that he'd actually defended me. Nathan Warner, who treated people like malfunctioning equipment, had just kicked out someone he'd known for 20 years because she insulted me. Serena, he said, and his voice sounded strange. I apologize for Victoria's behavior. That was inappropriate. I looked up at him surprised because Nathan didn't apologize for anything ever. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's not okay. She had no right to speak to you that way. He closed the door and walked over to my desk, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him. She won't be a problem. Victoria barely comes by the office. She's usually too busy vacationing in Europe or wherever her father's money takes her this week. I actually sighed with relief because dealing with Nathan was hard enough without some rich princess making my life miserable. I'll make sure she understands you're off limits. The way he said it made something flutter in my chest, but I pushed that feeling down because this was Nathan, and feeling anything about him except professional frustration was a terrible idea. I should have known Victoria wouldn't give up that easily. 3 days of peace was all I got before she showed up again right before Nathan's biggest client meeting of the month. I was carrying contracts to the conference room when she stepped out of the elevator looking like she'd walked off a runway. "Oh, good you're here," she said with that fake sweet voice that irked me. "Could you refill my coffee? I'm almost out." I knew she was baiting me, but I had work to do. "There's a coffee machine in the break room," I said, walking past her, but she followed me down the hall. That's not very professional. When Nathan and I were together, I never had to get my own coffee. You were together? I stopped walking because this was news to me. Victoria smiled like she'd won something. "Oh, he didn't tell you. We dated all through college. Everyone assumed we'd get married. Our families certainly expected it." My stomach did this weird, uncomfortable thing, but I kept my face neutral. "Well, you're not together now, and I have actual work to do." I turned to keep walking and felt liquid splash across my back. Coffee soaked through my white blouse, and I gasped at the temperature. "Oh no." Victoria's voice was loud enough that several people stuck their heads out of offices. "I'm so clumsy. Though you really shouldn't stop suddenly in hallways." My shirt was completely see-through now and sticking to my skin. The conference room was going to be full of clients who'd be here any minute, and I looked like I'd been in a wet t-shirt contest. "You did that on purpose," I said, and my voice shook with anger. "Prove it," she whispered. Then louder said, "You should really go change. Oh wait, you probably don't have extra clothes here, do you? People like you usually don't think ahead." Nathan came out of his office and took in the scene. Me soaked and shaking with rage, Victoria standing there looking innocent, and half the office watching. Without saying a word, he walked back into his office and came out with his suit jacket. "Put this on," he said quietly. And when I didn't move because I was still in shock, he stepped closer and draped it over my shoulders himself. "Victoria, leave. Now." His voice was ice. "Nathan, I said it was an accident. I don't care. Get out." She looked between us and her face went hard. "This isn't over," she said to me quietly before leaving. The jacket was warm and smelled expensive and safe. Nathan's hand was still on my shoulder, and I realized the entire office was staring. "I need to change," I said. "Take the rest of the day off. But the meeting, I'll handle it. Go home, Serena." I wanted to argue, but I was embarrassed, so I just nodded. The next morning, I found my landlord, Mr. Duncan, waiting outside my apartment door. He had that look people get when they're about to deliver bad news. "Ms. Caldwell, we need to discuss your lease violations." "What violations?" "Noise complaints, unauthorized pets, running a business from your apartment. I'm starting eviction proceedings." I knew this was complete bullshit because none of my neighbors had ever complained about me, and I didn't do anything he was accusing me of. I immediately felt the rage from yesterday come flooding back because I knew Victoria was the one behind this. "How much did she pay you?" I asked bluntly. His face went red. Said, "I don't know what you're implying, but I have legitimate complaints." "Show me them. Written complaints with signatures, or this conversation is over." He fumbled with his folder, and I knew I had him. "They were verbal." "So you're trying to evict me based on nothing?" "That's illegal, Mr. Duncan." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "For the record, I'm requesting written documentation of these alleged violations. If you proceed without proper documentation, I'll be contacting a lawyer and the housing authority." He stared at my phone, then practically ran down the hallway muttering about reviewing the situation. I stood there shaking because I couldn't actually afford a lawyer, but at least I'd won this round. If that wasn't enough from Victoria, she started getting my car towed, a ploy to get me fired. Each time cost me $150. I didn't have plus Uber fees that were eating through my savings. By the third time I walked into the office 40 minutes late, Nathan was standing by my desk with that expression that made people cry. I never thought he would make that face towards me. "You're late," he said flatly. My car got towed. Again. That's not my problem. The Suarez contracts needed to be filed an hour ago. I'll do them right now. They're already done. I had to do them myself. Your job is to handle these things so I don't have to. My hands were shaking as I sat at my desk, and when I started typing up meeting notes, I made 3 typos in the first paragraph. Nathan noticed immediately. This is unacceptable, he said, dropping the paper on my desk. Your work quality has declined significantly this week. You've been late 3 times, and now you're making mistakes a high school intern wouldn't make. The frustration and exhaustion hit me all at once. Victoria was winning. I'm trying my best here, Nathan. I'll fix it, I promise. I already have. My driver will pick you up every morning starting tomorrow. I stared at him. That's weird and inappropriate. It's practical. You being late affects my schedule. I'm not getting in a car with your driver every day. That's your only option unless you want to find another job. Your performance this week has been subpar, and I'm offering a solution. Take it or clean out your desk. The threat was real, and we both knew I couldn't afford to lose this job. The next morning, a black town car was waiting outside, and I felt ridiculous climbing in like some kind of executive. Then I saw Nathan in the back seat and nearly backed right out. What are you doing here? It's my car, he said, not looking up from his phone. You didn't say you'd be here. I'm not making 2 trips, sit down. We're going to be late. The first ride was 20 minutes of complete silence. I tried once to make conversation. Traffic's not too bad this morning, I said, and he just looked at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language before returning to his phone. I spent the rest of the ride staring out the window, feeling like an idiot. The second morning was worse because I was hyper-aware of everything. How he smelled like expensive cologne. How his knee was inches from mine. How his fingers moved across his phone screen with this practiced efficiency. I tried again with small talk. Thanks for this. The ride, I mean. He made a sound that might have been acknowledgement but didn't look up. Do you always work during your commute? Yes. That was it. 1 word. I gave up and pulled out my own phone. The third morning I came prepared. I'd made a list of work topics that actually needed discussing. We need to reschedule the Stride meeting, I said as soon as I got in. He looked up slightly surprised. Why? Because it conflicts with your Tokyo conference call, which you said was priority. He actually put his phone down. When do you suggest? Thursday at 2. Stride's assistant confirmed he's free. Fine. Make it happen. It wasn't exactly conversation, but it was progress. By the 5th ride, things were looking up. I'd update him on schedule changes, and he'd actually respond with more than 1 word. By the 2nd week, I felt brave enough to be myself again. You know, you could try saying good morning like a normal person, I said one day when I got in. Good morning, he said flatly. See, how painful was that? Excruciating. But his mouth did that tiny, almost smile thing. By the 3rd week, the rides were the best part of my day because we actually talked now. That terrified me. One morning, I was complaining about my student loans when Nathan said, "You went to a good school." Yeah, well, good schools come with good debt. 20 more years of payments unless I win the lottery. Why didn't you go to a community college first? Because I was 18 and stupid and thought I was too smart for community college. Turns out I was just too arrogant. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I was 22 when I started my first company. Lost everything in 6 months. I turned to look at him because Nathan never talked about failure. What happened? I thought being smart was enough. Turns out knowing how to code doesn't mean knowing how to run a business. I didn't sleep for 3 days trying to save it. His voice was flat, but his knuckles were white where he gripped his phone. That must have been horrible, I said, and meant it. My father called it a valuable learning experience. Then he bought the assets for pennies and made $5 million off my mistakes. The casual cruelty of it made my chest hurt. Your dad sounds like a real gem. He taught me that emotions are expensive. That's the worst lesson I've ever heard. He looked at me, then really looked at me. What did your parents teach you? My mom taught me that mac and cheese counts as a vegetable if you put enough hope in it, I said, and his mouth twitched. When I got this job, she literally did a victory dance in our kitchen, full choreography. Nearly broke her hip. He actually almost laughed. Your mother sounds interesting. She'd probably adopt you. She has a thing for strays who need feeding. I don't need feeding. Nathan, you forget to eat lunch every single day. I don't forget. I prioritize. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. The problem was every morning it got harder to pretend I didn't feel something when he looked at me. When our knees accidentally touched, I felt it for hours. When he handed me coffee, he'd started buying for me without asking. I wanted to read meaning into it. Victoria was trying to destroy my life. And here I was falling for someone who would never see me as more than an employee who happened to be good at calling him out on his bullshit. The dread that came with that realization was almost worse than everything Victoria had done, because at least with her I could fight back. With these feelings, I was completely helpless. That helpless feeling followed me home that day. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, still replaying the morning's car ride and Nathan's almost smile. Then I reached my floor and stopped. My apartment door was slightly open. I pushed it wider with my foot and my entire body went cold. Everything was destroyed. My couch was flipped and slashed open with stuffing everywhere. Red spray paint covered the walls with horror and know your place and he's mine in huge dripping letters. My clothes were cut into pieces and thrown around like confetti. Every dish I owned was smashed in the kitchen. The photo of my mom and me at my graduation was in pieces with what looked like heel marks through the glass. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and without thinking I called Nathan. Not the police. Not my super. Nathan. He answered on the first ring. Serena? Did you leave something in the car? Someone broke into my apartment, I said, and my voice sounded weird and distant. Get out. Right now. Go to the hallway. I heard keys jingling on his end. I'm coming. Don't go back inside. He was there in 15 minutes. He took one look at my face and then walked past me into the apartment. His expression went from controlled to murderous as he saw the damage. Pack a bag, he said. What? You're not staying here. Pack what you need. Nathan, I can't just... Yes, you can. Pack a bag or I'll pack it for you. The way he said it meant there was no argument, so I grabbed clothes that weren't destroyed and threw them in my gym bag. Where are we going? I asked in his car. My place. That's inappropriate. I'll get a hotel. With what money? He was right, and I hated it. This is Victoria, isn't it? I said, and it wasn't really a question. Yes. His hands were white on the steering wheel. We need to call the police. Tomorrow. Tonight you need somewhere safe to sleep. His apartment was all black and chrome and windows overlooking the city. Beautiful and cold like him. Or like I used to think he was. Guest room is down the hall, he said, putting my bag down. There are towels in the bathroom. Use whatever you need. He turned to go to what I assumed was his room, and I grabbed his arm without thinking. Thank you, I said, and he looked down at where I was touching him like he couldn't quite process it. She won't touch you here, he said quietly, then walked away. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words on my walls and imagined Victoria in my space touching my things. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up and went out to find water. Light was coming from down another hallway, and I found Nathan in a home office typing on his laptop. He looked completely different in sweats and a t-shirt with his hair all messy human. Vulnerable, even. Can't sleep either? He asked without looking up. Every time I close my eyes, I see my apartment. I sat in the chair across from his desk. I'm sorry, he said, and he looked it. This is my fault. I should have handled Victoria years ago. Why didn't you? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Her father owns 30% of my company. She knows things about my early deals that weren't entirely legal. Nothing major, but enough to cause problems. I thought if I just ignored her, she'd get bored. Instead, she escalated to breaking and entering and destruction of property, I said, and he actually flinched. I'll pay for everything to be replaced. I don't want your money, Nathan. I want her to stop. She will. I'll make sure of it. The way he said it was different from his usual cold certainty. This was personal. Why do you care so much? I asked before I could stop myself. He looked at me for a long time, then said, I'm just worried about you. We talked until the sun came up. He told me about growing up with Victoria, always there, always pushing boundaries. I told him about feeling like I was drowning, trying to keep up with everything. At some point, I made coffee and we moved to his living room, sitting on opposite ends of his probably $10,000 couch. You look different like this, I said as morning light filled the room. Like what? Human. He almost smiled. You should get some sleep, he said, but neither of us moved. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke up to voices. Nathan's shirt was soft and smelled like him, and I was confused until I remembered I'd changed into it without thinking. I almost moved to sniff it, but then I saw Victoria standing in the living room with a key in her hand, staring at me like she wanted to commit murder. What is she doing here? In your shirt? Victoria's voice went shrill and her perfect face twisted into something ugly. I stood up from the couch, still groggy, but anger woke me up fast. You destroyed my apartment, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. You broke in and destroyed everything I own. Victoria's expression shifted to fake confusion. I have no idea what you're talking about. Are you feeling okay? Maybe the stress of trying to keep up with Nathan's world is getting to you. Cut the act, Victoria. We both know you did it. The spray paint calling me a whore? Saying he's yours? That's exactly your style of psycho. She stepped closer and I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with something bitter like rage. You can't prove anything. And making accusations without evidence? That's called slander. Daddy's lawyers would eat you alive. Nathan walked in from the kitchen and positioned himself between us. How did you get in here, Victoria? His voice was controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. She held up a key with a little smile. You gave me this years ago, remember? When we were together? You never asked for it back. We were never together. You decided we were, and I was too young to know how to handle your delusions. Her face went red. Delusions? We were in love, Nathan. Before you decided to play with your little toys. She looked at me with disgust. First that marketing girl, then the lawyer, now this piece of trash. You always did like slumming it when you wanted to rebel. Don't talk about her like that, Nathan said, and there was something dangerous in his tone I'd never heard before. Victoria moved closer to him and tried to touch his face, but he caught her wrist. You're defending her? After everything we've been through? Our families built empires together. We're meant to be together. Everyone knows it. The only thing everyone knows is that you're unstable, I said, and probably should have kept my mouth shut, but I was done being quiet. You're so desperate for someone who clearly doesn't want you that you've turned into a stalker? It's pathetic. Victoria yanked her hand away from Nathan and spun to face me. You think you've won something here? You think wearing his shirt and sleeping in his apartment makes you special? I've known him since he was 7. I know every secret, every mistake, every dirty deal his company made to get where it is. Are you threatening me? Nathan asked, and his voice was deadly quiet. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm reminding you that some relationships can't be broken. Your little assistant will figure out soon enough what you really are: cold, empty, incapable of real emotion. Or maybe I'll just make her life so miserable she runs away screaming. The words settled into my chest like ice water. I thought about my destroyed apartment, the towing, the eviction attempt. How far would she actually go? Victoria turned back to Nathan. This is your last chance. Send her away and come to dinner with me and Daddy. We have a proposal that could triple your company's value. All you have to do is remember where your loyalties should be. She walked toward the door, then paused. I'll give you 24 hours to think about it. After that, the offer expires and things get much worse for your little charity case. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt more threatening than a slam. Nathan stood there staring at the door with his hands clenched into fists. I could see him processing what to do next, but I was exhausted all over again. I need more sleep, I said, and walked to the guest room before he could respond. But I didn't sleep. I lay in that expensive guest bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything Victoria had said. The apartment vandalism was just the beginning. What was I doing? Staying at my boss's apartment because some unhinged woman destroyed my home. And for what? A job. A job I could get anywhere else. A job that wasn't worth looking over my shoulder every day wondering what Victoria would do next. She had her father's money and lawyers and apparently Nathan's secrets. I had student loans and a destroyed apartment, and a boss who I was developing feelings for, which made everything 10 times more complicated. After multiple hours passed, I'd made my decision. I got dressed in my own clothes and spent an hour writing a resignation letter. My hands shook the entire time, but I knew this was the smart choice. The safe choice. Nathan's driver took us to the office and the ride was silent. He kept glancing at me, but I stared out the window because if I looked at him, I might lose my nerve. When we got to the office, I went straight to my desk and printed the letter. Then I walked to his door and knocked. Come in. I closed the door behind me and placed the letter on his desk. He looked at it, then at me. What's this? My resignation. 2 weeks' notice. You're quitting? He asked as if I spoke another language. Yes. Because of Victoria. It wasn't a question. Because this isn't worth it, Nathan. She's threatened to make my life miserable. And for what? So I can keep scheduling your meetings? I can get another job. One where psychotic rich women don't vandalize my home. He stood up and came around the desk. So that's it? She wins? She already won. The second she broke into my apartment, she won. I can't fight someone like that. I don't have the money or the connections or the energy. I crossed my arms because I needed the barrier. This is the smart decision. I can't do this without you, he said softly, and suddenly that barrier I created wanted to disappear, but I didn't falter. You managed before I got here. Barely. And not well, he scoffed. Do you know what happened the week before you started? I shook my head. I fired my assistant on a Tuesday. By Friday, I'd gone through 2 temps who both quit mid-shift. I had 11 assistants in 2 years before you. None of them lasted more than 4 months. I know you're difficult to work for. You don't understand. He cut me off. I had meetings scheduled over each other, forgot a board presentation, and told my CFO his work was garbage in front of the entire executive team. The company was running but barely. Then you showed up and yelled at me twice in one morning, and somehow everything started working. Nathan, that's just basic organization. It's not just organization, Serena. It's not about learning my schedule or managing my emails. It's about understanding how I think and working around it instead of just surviving it. His voice was urgent. You're the only person I've ever been comfortable with in my own office. The only one who doesn't tiptoe around me like I'm about to explode. He stepped closer and the barrier collapsed. She's not going to stop Nathan. Then let me handle her. Let me protect you. His jaw tightened. I would destroy every contract I have with her father. You wouldn't. It would destroy your company too. I'd rather burn it all down than let her hurt you again. His eyes searched mine. He was looking to see if I believed him, if he had somehow convinced me. I wasn't sure if either of us found what we were looking for because his expression cracked. Please don't quit. Not because of her, he pleaded. I stood there looking at my resignation letter, feeling everything inside me war with itself. The smart choice was to leave. The safe choice was to run. But the way he was looking at me made me want to be brave, even though I'd never felt less brave in my life. I need to think, I finally said, and his face fell, but he nodded. Okay, take the day. Take whatever you need. I went back to my desk but couldn't focus on anything. Nathan disappeared into his office and I heard him making phone calls with that sharp tone he used when he meant business. An hour later, he came out with his suit jacket on. I have a meeting. I'll be back this afternoon. It's not on your calendar. I know. He looked at me and his eyes were cold in a way I hadn't seen in months. Cancel everything else today. Then he was gone and I spent the next 3 hours unable to focus on anything. I kept looking at my resignation letter sitting on my desk and wondering if I was making a huge mistake either way. When Nathan came back, he looked different, calmer somehow, but also like he'd just won a war. He walked straight to my desk and said, "Come into my office." I followed him and closed the door behind us. He loosened his tie and sat on the edge of his desk instead of behind it. I went to see Victoria and her dad, Richard. "Nathan, what did you—" Panic flooded through me. "Let me finish." He took a breath. I walked into his office and Victoria was there. I told them I had security footage of Victoria entering your building 40 minutes before the break-in. I have recordings of her threats. I have documentation of every single thing she's done to you. His jaw tightened. I told Richard that if Victoria so much as looked at you wrong again, I'd release every piece of dirt I have on his company. And I have a lot Serena offshore accounts, falsified shareholder reports, tax evasion schemes going back a decade. I stared at him in shock. You were sitting on all that? My father taught me to always have leverage. I just never cared enough to use it before. He looked annoyed at his next thoughts. Victoria tried to cry, tried to say she just wanted me to see you weren't right for me. I told her I didn't care what she wanted, that she was a delusional stalker who'd committed multiple crimes and I was done playing nice. What did her father say? He tried to bluff at first, said I wouldn't risk my own company. Nathan's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. So I put a document on his desk, a legally binding agreement I'd had drawn up that morning. Victoria leaves the country by Friday. She deletes your contact information. She never attempts contact with either of us again. If she violates any of those terms, I release everything and the SEC gets copies hand-delivered. He signed it? Not at first. So I told him I'd also been documenting every board meeting where he pushed illegal practices, that I had emails proving he knew exactly what his company was doing. Nathan's voice went flat. I told him I'd testify against him personally if it came to that. I'd burn my own company down if it meant taking his with it. He looked at me and his expression softened slightly. He signed. Victoria's leaving for London on Saturday. She won't be back. I made sure the contracts are ironclad. You really did all that? I told you I'd burn it down before I let her hurt you again. I meant it. He stood up and moved closer. You're safe now, Serena. She can't touch you anymore. The relief hit me so hard I almost sat down. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. His voice dropped and something desperate crept into it. Say you're not quitting. I looked at him and saw something in his expression I'd never seen before: vulnerability. Real fear that I'd still leave. Nathan, I know I'm asking a lot. I know this whole situation is insane and you have every right to run. He ran a hand through his hair, making it messy. But I need you to understand something. This isn't about work anymore. It hasn't been for a while. My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying those mornings in the car are the only time I feel like myself. I'm saying that you being in my apartment, in my shirt, just felt right. I'm saying when I saw your resignation letter, I felt something I haven't felt in years. His hands clenched at his sides like he was physically stopping himself from reaching for me. Terror. Real terror that you'd actually leave. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there like an idiot, taking in every word he said. Words I never thought he would say. You make me want to deserve having you around. The words came out rough. You make me want to be someone worth knowing instead of just someone people tolerate because I pay them. Every time you call me out for being horrible, I go home and actually think about it. Every time you smile at me like I've done something right, I feel it for hours. I couldn't breathe. Serena, I'm completely gone for you and it terrifies me. He stepped closer and his voice went quiet. I threatened to destroy everything I've spent a decade building because the thought of you leaving hurt worse than losing all of it. Please don't go, Serena, because I don't know how to be the person I was before you, and I don't want to learn. I looked at him standing there with his tie loose and his hair messy, and his expression completely open for once. Nathan Warner, who never let anyone see him want anything, was practically begging me not to leave. Okay, I whispered. I'll stay. I could physically see the relief wash over him. Thank you. We stood there in his office with the afternoon sun coming through the windows, and for just a moment, everything was perfect. The next morning, I'm in Nathan's car heading to a meeting downtown. It's a beautiful Friday, and Victoria's flight leaves tonight. Just a few more hours. After today, we should celebrate, Nathan says, and his hand rests on the console between us, but he moves his hand to hold mine. He doesn't reach because someone hits us from behind. The impact from behind is so violent my head snaps back and hits the headrest hard enough to see stars. The car swerves wildly. What the hell? Nathan is fighting the wheel trying to keep us straight. I turn around and my blood turns to ice. Victoria's black SUV is right on our bumper and her face is twisted with something beyond rage. Something that looks like madness. She slams into us again even harder and we shoot forward through the intersection. Nathan is gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles are white. She's going to kill us, I say, and my voice sounds strange and distant. I know. Nathan accelerates trying to get distance, but she matches our speed easily. Hold on to something. We're going 60 through a 30 zone now, and my hands are gripping the door handle so hard it hurts. Nathan is checking mirrors constantly, his jaw clenched tight. Victoria rams us from behind again, and the whole car shudders. I can hear metal scraping. Something in the trunk crumples. She pulls up beside us in the oncoming lane, and when I make the mistake of looking at her, I see her face clearly. Her makeup is smeared. Her hair is wild. Her eyes are completely unhinged. She's screaming with her mouth wide open, veins bulging in her neck. She mouths the words, "You ruined everything," and then she jerks her wheel toward us. The impact sends us swerving and Nathan barely corrects in time. She hits us again, and again, each collision worse than the last. The bridge is ahead. Nathan's voice is strained. If we can just make it across, there's a police station on the other side. But something in my gut tells me the bridge is wrong, that we're running into a trap. But Victoria is right behind us, and there's nowhere else to go, and we're moving too fast to change direction now. We hit the bridge entrance going 90 miles an hour. The lanes narrow immediately. Concrete barriers rise up on both sides. No exits, no escape routes. Just 4 lanes stretching across the river with nowhere to go but forward. She accelerates and pulls up beside us again, matching our speed perfectly. When she looks at me again, she smiles, like she's genuinely having fun. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Then she slams into us with massive force. Our car hits the left barrier and sparks fly everywhere like fireworks. She's trying to push us over the edge. Nathan's voice is tight with real fear now, and that scares me more than anything because Nathan is never afraid. We're going over 100 miles an hour now, and I can see the city skyline spread out beyond the bridge. We're so impossibly high up, at least 15 stories above the river. If we go over the edge at this height, the fall alone would kill us before we even hit the water. "Nathan, I'm scared," I say, and tears are streaming down my face. "I don't want to die like this." "You're not going to die." He's fighting the wheel with everything he has, but I can see him losing control. "I won't let you." Victoria hits us again, and something in our car breaks with a sound like a gunshot. The steering wheel jerks hard to the left, and Nathan is fighting it with both hands, but it's not responding anymore. I can't control it. He's pulling the wheel with everything he has, but we're veering straight toward the barrier. Serena, I can't. We slam into the barrier going over 100 miles an hour. The world becomes violence and noise and chaos. The barrier crumples under the force of the impact we're spinning, and I'm screaming Nathan's name over and over, but I can't even hear my own voice. The car crashes through the barrier completely, and suddenly we're airborne. Time does this horrible thing where it stretches out so I can see everything. The sky spinning. The water far below getting closer. The bridge getting smaller behind us. Nathan's hand reaching for mine across the console, and our fingers just barely touching before we hit. Then we hit the edge, and the car dangles over the bridge. My door flies open from the impact, swinging wide over the emptiness below. I realize with horror that my seatbelt isn't fastened right. It twisted during the crash, and it's barely holding me at all. And suddenly I'm sliding sideways toward the open door, toward the drop. "Serena!" Nathan's voice is raw with terror. His hand shoots out and catches my wrist just as I slide completely out of the car. I'm hanging in the air with nothing below me but empty space. The wind is whipping around me, and when I look down, I can see the entire city spread out impossibly far below. The river looks like it's a mile away. "Nathan!" I'm screaming his name, and I can't stop. Can't control the sound coming out of me. "I've got you!" He's leaning out of the car, half his body hanging out too, holding my wrist with both hands. "Don't look down." But I can't help it. I look down and see exactly how far the fall is. See how the wind is moving my hair. See how my feet are dangling in nothing but air. 150 feet straight down to water that would feel exactly like concrete at this height. The car groans and shifts an inch toward the edge. My entire life flashes before my eyes in the space of seconds. My mom doing a victory dance in our tiny kitchen when I got this job, nearly knocking over a chair in her excitement. The day I crashed into Nathan's car and thought my life was over before it started our first morning ride together, when he actually smiled at something I said, and I realized he was human. The way he defended me against Victoria in his office last night, talking until sunrise in his apartment, seeing him vulnerable for the first time. Every single moment that led to this one, all of it racing through my mind in vivid detail. I'm going to die, and I never told him how I feel. I never said the words that matter most. "I love you." The words tear out of me with everything I have. "Nathan, I love you." Something changes in his face. The fear transforms into something else entirely. Pure, fierce determination. "No." His voice turns to steel. "You don't get to tell me that and then die. You don't get to do that to me." He starts pulling with everything he has, and I can see every muscle in his arms straining with the effort he's lifting me inch by impossible inch. The car groans again and shifts backward. It's sliding slowly off the edge. The car's moving. I can feel gravity starting to win. "Nathan, let me go, or we both die." "Never." He's pulled me up enough that I can grab the doorframe with my free hand. "Climb. You have to help me." I'm trying, but my hands are shaking so badly I can barely grip anything. My fingers keep slipping on the smooth metal. The car shifts again and slides another foot backward toward the drop. "I can't!" I'm sobbing so hard I can't see through my tears. "I'm too heavy, the car's going to fall." Then it falls with both of us inside because I'm not letting go. He pulls harder and I manage to get my other hand on the doorframe. "That's it. Keep going. Keep climbing." I'm pulling myself up and he's lifting me at the same time, and the car is groaning underneath us, the metal screaming in protest. Then I hear footsteps running on the bridge above us. Nathan, let her drop. Victoria's voice comes from somewhere above, shrill and desperate. The car's going over anyway. Save yourself and come with me. Get away from us. Nathan is still pulling me up, never stopping. I get my elbows onto the doorframe. Just a little more and I'll be back inside the car. Nathan shifts his grip and grabs both my arms, pulling with everything he has left. You can't have him. Victoria appears at Nathan's door on the bridge side. If I can't have him, then no one can. Nathan makes a desperate animal sound, and with one final massive pull, he drags me through the door and into the car and onto the bridge. I collapse on top of him just as the car slides completely off the bridge. This is your fault! She's hysterical, her voice cracking. You chose her. You chose wrong, and now look what happened. She backs away from the edge and disappears from view. For a second, I think she's leaving, that she's finally giving up. Then I hear an engine revving, getting louder. She's going to run us over, Nathan says, and his voice is completely hollow with the realization Victoria's SUV appears at the broken barrier above us. She's going to run us over and take us all out together. But the SUV passes over us by inches, so close I can feel the wind from it. Victoria miscalculated the angle. I watch her face through the windshield as she realizes her mistake. Watch her eyes go wide. Watch her mouth open to scream as she falls past us into the void below. She crashes into a concrete pillar sticking out from the bridge 50 feet below us. The impact sound is horrible, metal crunching and glass shattering. The SUV wraps around the pillar and hangs there. I can see her slumped forward in the driver's seat, not moving. Don't look, Nathan says, and he pulls my face into his chest, his hand cradling the back of my head. Sirens are screaming. People are shouting. I can hear a fire truck pulling up, its brakes squealing. You're safe now, Nathan whispers into my hair. You're safe. He says it like he's thanking every god. You wouldn't let go. I'm shaking so violently I can barely get the words out. You told me you loved me. His voice breaks completely. How could I let go after that? I meant it. I look up at him and his face is streaked with tears. I love you, Nathan. I love you too. He kisses my forehead, my cheeks, the bridge of my nose. I love you so much. The paramedics swarm around us immediately. Someone is wrapping us in blankets. We need a spinal board down here now. A paramedic's voice echoes up. Female victim, major trauma. Victoria's screaming starts then. Not the angry screaming from before, but something worse. Something that sounds like her entire world is ending. I can't move my legs. Her voice carries up to us, raw with terror. Why can't I move my legs? Fix it. Somebody fix it. One of the paramedics near us kneels down beside me. The woman who went over, was she the one chasing you? I nod because I can't speak. She's lucky to be alive at all, she says quietly. But the damage to her spine. 3 months later, Victoria was transferred to a rehabilitation facility in London. Her father quietly relocating her as far from us as possible. Nathan and I officially started dating. I'm still Nathan's assistant, and the office has never run better. Somehow he's become the kind of boss people actually want to work for. The CFO hasn't cried in months. You're taking credit for that, Nathan says one morning after his CFO thanks him for constructive feedback. I absolutely am, I reply, stealing his coffee. I've earned it. He pulls me close right there at my desk, not caring who sees. You've earned everything. We survived Victoria's madness, and somehow on the other side of all that destruction, we found exactly what we were looking for each other.